Is PlebGate becoming PlodGate? Today, the Police Federation was attacked for aggressively lobbying to remove Andrew Mitchell after the dispute at the gates of Downing Street. The head of the Federation inched towards a possible apology.
I'm going to wait to see what happens in relation to the investigation, and if he has been done a calumny in relation to what's happened, I'll be one of the first in the queue to apologise.
Well, why is the relationship between government and the police so fraught? Also tonight, the kings of the credit crunch, thousands of pawnbrokers filling a gap in the market for the rich and the poor.
There is no other choice, really. I wouldn't go to my family for money, for gas bottles. I'd rather use what I've got myself.
We'll talk to one MP who thinks the rules need to be toughened up. And Vladimir Putin threatens to retaliate against an American ban on corrupt Russian officials. Will he really stop Americans adopting Russian children? Good evening. While the police investigate the role played in Andrew Mitchell's downfall by an email sent by an off-duty officer who allegedly claimed to be a member of the public, the former Home Secretary Kenneth Baker has accused the Police Federation of using the affair for political ends. In the days following the dispute, not only did they want to get a cabinet minister, he said, they also tried to use the incident as a campaigning tool in the battle with the government over pay and conditions. The Police Federation denied this, but their chairman has said he'll apologise if it's found that a calumny was committed. In a moment, we'll discuss the tactics of the Police Federation and why relations between the government and rank-and-file officers are so strained. But first, here's David Grossman.
And so it appears we might have to say farewell to that rather clumsy label, PlebGate, and give a cautious, if weary, welcome to its reincarnation, PlodGate. Was there a conspiracy to fit up the former Chief Whip? That's a question we still can't answer. Today, the Metropolitan Police made a second arrest in their ongoing investigation.
There are questions too for David Cameron. How come it took Channel 4 to uncover the significant questions about the strength of evidence against Andrew Mitchell when David Cameron's own Cabinet Secretary, Sir Jeremy Haywood, had been given the job of investigating, had access to a
programme of reform that the police have actually been in need of for 30 years really.
And how has that gone down, that combination of measures?
The Police Federation has opposed each of those measures tooth and nail and with as emotional a campaign as any public sector union has done.
But are the actions of the Police Federation in furthering their aims the legitimate campaigning of a representative body, or have they tipped into moral blackmail and bullying?
Home Secretary, do you sleep at night?
There are not many playing nice cop at the Police Federation conference if you're the Home Secretary. Today, the Police Federation answered questions for the first time about their actions during the Mitchell affair.
I think it's unfortunate that we are 3 months down the line and only now finding out what some of these facts were at the very start. Seeing the CCTV footage, seeing the fact that there was apparently some police officer purporting to be a member of the public, that sort of thing. It's unfortunate it's taken 3 months for those facts to come out.
It's clear that Andrew Mitchell is now a far more relaxed figure given the revelations of the week.
Happy Christmas.
Relations between ministers and the police are, though, if anything, more tense than ever.
David Grossman. Well, I'm joined now from Brighton by the former Conservative Home Secretary Lord Baker, from Newcastle by the best-selling diarist and former Labour Minister Chris Mullen, and with me in the studio are Kevin Hurley, newly elected Independent Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey and former Senior Officer at Scotland Yard, and the author and former Met Police Officer Mike Pannett. The Police Federation, by the way, was not available to come on tonight. First of all, Lord Baker, the police are in a situation where they're not allowed to strike. Surely they've got every right to take the battle to the government wherever they can.
Yes, of course they can protest. I'm not objecting to that at all. But the police are in real trouble this year. We had the Hillsborough affair where the police fabricated evidence. We had the Rotherham affair where the police did not persecute people for seducing young girls. Then we had corrupt police officers in the Leveson inquiry. And we had this extraordinary episode that you've just described of a police officer pretending to be a member of the public and fabricating evidence, totally false evidence, saying there was a crowd. There was.
Let's just be quite clear, these are still allegations, Lord Baker, on the last point.
Sorry?
There's still allegations, remember, on the last point.
Yes, allegations, yes, certainly
yeah.
allegations. And I believe that the Police Federation had decided they saw a wounded cabinet minister and they decided to strike and try and bring him down. They ran an overtly political campaign, they produced T-shirts, they had banners at the Tory party conference, and they were using this as an attack upon the government, which they dislike. They don't like the review that's been set up into their pay conditions and early retirement. But as a result, they behaved atrociously and unfairly.
Well, let me just put that straight to Kevin Hurley. Atrociously unfairly. It looked as if the Police Federation was being gleeful, acting in a kind of cheap way.
Well, I mean, I come at this from a point of view of trying to deliver for the people of Surrey. My concern is to make sure the morale and motivation of the police officers is fit for purpose and they're going to deliver it.
Yeah, but just on that very point, you're delivering police. Would you have been happy if police officers in your area were wearing those T-shirts? Maybe they were.
I don't know if they were, but I think the strongest weapon the police will always have is to retain their dignity, remain measured. But I think.
And do you think they lost it by having those T-shirts?
I think they did, but there's a huge measure of frustration. They've seen the starting rate of police constables cut to £19,000 a year. That's £4,000 a year less than a police community support officer.
Yeah, I would say that the average police officer is on more than 40,000 a year, and 1 in 4 of Met officers who are constables are on 48,000 a year.
Well, no, that's not true. There are a number of police officers on that sort of money. My concern, though, is the nature and the style of police officers we're now going to be able to recruit on this poor money, because I want quality people to protect the Surrey population.
Chris Munn, you've got long experience of the police. Are you surprised that the Federation acted in such a vehement way?
Not in the least. They have a long track record of bullying and intimidating people who get in their way, be they journalists or politicians or whoever. I've been monstered by them myself in days
what
gone
way?
by.
Give a quick example of being bullied. You personally bullied, really?
Well, I was the chairman of the Home Affairs
Yes.
Select Committee some years ago, and we conducted an inquiry into reforming peace procedures, and as a result of some not very controversial remarks I made, they started ringing up the Home Secretary demanding that he call for my dismissal. Then they rang the opposition Home Affairs spokesman and made the same demand. Then they rang round each member of the committee demanding they dissociate themselves from me. All of them declined, as it happened. But I don't complain about that because I'm a politician. I don't mind the heat of the kitchen. That is their modus operandi, I'm afraid.
Is that a reasonable modus operandi, Mike Pannett? Is it a measure of the frustration that exists between the government and rank-and-file officers? I mean, what David Cameron called it, the last great unreformed public service. Is there a real rancour in there?
Look, I'll tell you what is in here is that the Federation, and the rank-and-file officers in this country are at an all-time low. And I've heard what Lord Baker's had to say there, and obviously just listening to comments being made about the Federation and the ref. But look, the real question here, Kirsty, yes, there is issues at the moment between Federation and government. I've never known it so bad, and that is not good for policing, and it's not good for governance.
Do you think, but do you think, just on the very point that Lord Baker was saying, do you think there's a defensiveness in the police? You know, Hillsborough, Leveson and so forth?
There's some dreadful things happened within policing, and a lot of those, like Hillsborough, is going to be, there's big inquiries taking place. But look, taking it right back, as while we're all sitting here, after all these months, we're looking at the original incident where the Chief Whip has come to the gates of Buckingham Palace, and there's been an altercation, of Downing Street, I beg your pardon, and there's been an altercation at those gates. Now, those officers have then reported what was said, and we've got to remember this is what this is all about. What did the Chief Whip say? Now, I've got no doubt, and neither has the Commissioner, Hogan Howe, about the integrity of those two police officers that have said what was said. Now, all through this, Mitchell has never said what he actually did say. If he'd have just said, I'm sorry, and he needn't have even said what he'd used, I think that would have been the end of it. But he said, in the end, first of all, he didn't say anything. Secondly, then he said, I did swear, but I didn't say what those officers have said.
Lord Baker, do you think what Mike Pannett has said about the sequence of events there and the idea that if Andrew Mitchell had spoken quickly, it would have diffused this, is again in itself symptomatic of the bad relationship that exists between the police and the government?
But on the contrary, Andrew Mitchell apologised several times. He responded very quickly. Look, what you might be witnessing here is a grave error of injustice. In fact, from a police officer, we know that one has lied totally. And could I just say to the Commissioner...
We're at allegation stage at the moment, just Lord Baker.
But could I just say to the Commissioner that one of the jobs he has to do is to try and restore the trust of the British public in the police. And I have to say to him, I don't think that begins with talking about their pays and salaries. In fact, there is a lack of trust at the moment, and that's very, 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 very disturbing. Because the British public have got to have trust in their police.
Let me talk about that, though. The trust in the police is very, very important. And Lord Baker, and indeed Chris Mullen too, there were two reports. Obviously the Sheehy report, which wasn't implemented, and it was a real struggle, and the Windsor report. And actually there has to be some kind of accommodation. Why is it so hard to come to this accommodation?
Well, first of all, I think Lord Baker's absolutely correct. We need to rebuild the trust in the whole way in which the police are viewed, but they are still regarded very, very highly. But what this amounts to here is there's been a breakdown of relationships between government and the Police Federation.
Yeah, I mean, you saw that there. You saw the remark to Theresa May, how do you sleep at night? I mean, why should a Home Secretary go to the conference?
Well, because she is the leader, she needs to influence the people she's working with. The real problem you've got here is, like everyone else in society, they're having their pay and conditions cut, but also they're having swinging changes done to the way in which they operate, which cause them to believe they're considered as lesser citizens. Their bosses have been replaced by people who've never been in the police before.
Well, the boss, Tom Windsor, you're talking about.
Tom Windsor, other Majesty's Inspectors from Constabulary, they're now being told that all their promotions stopped and people are coming in with 3 years service to replace them. I come at this not as a police officer, but as a politician who wants to maintain the morale of the workforce.
But you do agree, or don't you, maybe you don't, that actually the police service does need reformed and it should take a hit like so many other services are having to take at the moment. I mean, we're still in recessionary times.
I agree that the police have to take cuts like so many other public sector organisations, but what I don't necessarily agree with is actions that damage the overall morale and sense of value of the police service. Some of the things within this isn't just, from the police point of view, just about the salaries. It's about the fact that people have been brought in 3 years in charge of whole shifts of people.
Let me put that to Chris Mullen. Do you think that on the government side there hasn't been a very sensitive handling? For example, the Commissioner there talks about Tom Windsor coming in, Tom Windsor's report, and then, of course, he became an Inspector Constabulary. He's never been a police officer.
Well, they have seen off all comers over the last 20 or 30 years when it comes to reform, and there is scope for considerable reform in relation to not only, well, in particular to some of the police practices and great waste of resources sometimes. I have to say as well, there's nothing new about this. They say that morale is at an all-time low. I've heard that at least half a dozen times in the last 20 years. The fact is that they've given a succession of Home Secretaries, they've mistreated a succession of Home Office ministers at their annual conference. They were slow hand-clapping Jack Straw during the 2005 general election.
So there are no respect for political party. This isn't a party pre.
No, I don't complain about. I don't. The only point I'm making to you is not particularly a grudge against this government. It's been a mystery to me.
How has it come to this, Mike Pannett, that we're in a situation where we need the public to trust and have faith in police officers. They do a job where they put their lives at risk day in, day out.
Yep.
But we are now, partly as a result of the Andrew Mitchell affair, whatever happens to it, we might be facing discussions, conversations, negotiations which are even more acrimonious depending on the outcome of this case.
Yeah, look, Kirsty, and just to go back to what Lord Baker said about Andrew Mitchell offering an apology, yes, he did, but he followed it up with, but I didn't say what those officers have said. And he brought into question the integrity of those officers. So that was that point, just to cover it. Look, I have said today, I think the public are absolutely fed up with what's going on. We've seen political point scoring from all sides, and it's got to stop. This is about policing, and this is about politics, and we've got to get the two together, because at the end of the day, there should be a common cause, and that should be to deal with people who are making people's lives a misery, and that's what policing's about. But here we are, months down the line, there's been some dreadful things and cuts that have happened within the police, and you've seen of issues within policing.
And Kenneth Baker, it may be that Andrew Mitchell is back in a cabinet post soon. What do you think of the likelihood of that is?
It is quite possible. But can I just make a point about Tom Windsor? The police should not really object to somebody outside the police force being their chief inspector. The prisons have been inspected now for over 15 years by people who have nothing to do with the prison service. David Ramsbottom and the judge before him, and they did very, very good reports. The police have always said, this is our particular field, no one else must take an interest in it at all. And I think things have got to move on from that. And that's part of winning back the trust. The police have got to answer to somebody, and they should be answering to the new commissioners.
Thank you.
One of the things that should be happening. But I still think that the politicisation of the police would be disastrous for our democracy, and the Federation really must change its tune. And I thought the weasel words of the chairman tonight, oh, if Andrew Mitchell is found not guilty, we'll apologise.
Thank you all very much.
How weaselly can you get?
Thank you all very much indeed. And we must apologise for the technical problems in the film that preceded this discussion. In many people's minds, pawnbroking